I'm Emily Clark. I'm the Director of Architectural Services at ATG. I am based out of the Phoenix, Arizona office, so welcome today. We'll do a brief introduction around the virtual room that we have here to introduce the team that we have today. Michael, I'll have you go.
Okay. My name is Michael Chave. I'm an AEC technical specialist here at ATG USA. My primary background is in structural design. I'm also a Bluebeam certified instructor as well as Bluebeam certified consultant. So any of you out there that have Bluebeam required questions or anything circled around structural design, you can always ask, but I do have some experience with architectural from internships and also mechanical design as well.
Perfect. Patrick?
Hi, I'm Patrick Podine. I'm a technical specialist here in Phoenix as well. My background is mainly architectural, have a little bit of structural, a little bit of interior, a little bit of prefab. But if you follow me on LinkedIn or anything like that, you know I'm kind of all about Dynamo. If you're not following me and you want to know more about Dynamo, go ahead and follow me on LinkedIn. Yeah, I'm all about Dynamo. Love it, breathe it, dream about it. Everything about it, yeah.
Living that Dynamo life.
Yeah, there you go.
Sounds
awesome.
like a t-shirt, right?
Yeah. You beat me to it.
I'm all about that Dynamo life. See, I like that.
We're going to get those made.
And it should be a little dinosaur with a little egg.
I love it.
Let's make it happen. All right, James, you're up.
That's actually from a Marvel. That's what War Machine says to Captain Marvel. We're all about that superhuman or that hero life, superhero life. So I'm James Hughes. I'm a registered architect out of Central Arkansas. About 13 years experience in the architectural field. Past 5.5 years have been working with ATG, doing consulting for architectural firms, services, a whole lot of Revit trainings. So we do a lot of advanced Revit training, that sort of thing. I'm not so much about the Dynamo life or the computational BIM side, but all of the other, I don't know, traditional Revit side things we do. And like these other panelists, kind of increasingly being asked to be more of a commentator on you know what's going on, more of a personality, if that's really kind of a position. We're all sort of doing consulting, but also advising.
Perfect. Brian?
My name is Brian Weeks, and I am a senior AEC technical specialist here at ATG, and I just entered my 22nd year of being in the industry of architecture, project architect, project manager, multiple types of projects, and I've been using Revit since 2009. So specialize in Revit, BIM, construction documents, Inkscape, little of all the above of the design aspect.
Perfect. So I think we have a very diverse, well-rounded group here, which I think is awesome. So that way, pretty much any question that comes in, we should be able to have it covered. If we don't have the answer, however, we can always get back to you. But I'm really excited to have such a great group here today. So I'm going to go ahead and start with a couple questions, and I'm really glad to see that we have some questions coming in. So the first question would be, what would be the best way to view 3D PDFs on a mobile device? And again, there are no right or wrong answers, and I know that we also have different opinions, so I always encourage people to share their recommendations. I mean, I feel like Michael might have something with Bluebeam, someone else might have another suggestion as well. So really just be open and honest and have a discussion.
Well, Emily already answered it.
Oh.
If we were going to stay on message, we would say Bluebeam. But you know, one of the beauties of 3D PDF, and the reason architects should be authoring those and sending them to their clients and to the contractor, is because it can be opened up in any device that's capable of opening a PDF. And so you can actually open it in email, in pinch and zoom, rotate the model. It works in anything that reads PDF. Now, what's going to be the best experience? I would probably say Bluebeam, because that was the question, but you don't have to have Bluebeam. And that's, you can actually have, you know, a customer that has no Bluebeam license. If they've got free Acrobat, they can do that. Anytime you can sit on a hammock and open up an iPad and spin a 3D, that's the best experience. Any of those softwares.
Does anyone have experience with the Bluebeam app? Because they're saying the Bluebeam app doesn't work with 3D PDFs on a mobile device. Have we ran into that before?
I'll open one up right now and check it for you.
Okay.
That's wild if it doesn't.
Yeah,
I wonder if that's, I do know this, that Bluebeam is kind of, all of their intention and efforts and development have been focused not around the lower end iPad software and more around their other 3 SKUs of the product. But I'd be surprised if, I hope you're wrong. I hope that you can.
Yeah, we'll circle back because I have to add myself to my iPad app. And then I'm also going to try it with Bluebeam drawings and see that case as well.
Okay, so while you're working on that, I'll go ahead and bring up the next question. What would you, and we'll definitely remember to go back to that as well. What would you recommend for handling finish schedules and showing room or floor finishes? Going with parameters integrating to rooms, or modeling thin walls or floors, or any other recommendation?
I have seen it done all of those ways, in actually an even mix. And normally, and so I do typically do Revit training geared towards architects, but a lot of architecture firms, as you can imagine, do have an interiors department where we do cover that material. And then I've done probably 6 interior design only trainings as well. And so we have seen an even mix of people painting surfaces, splitting and painting them to be able to have the material show in a rendering. And so that's kind of an easy lift for people to be able to do. And you've got some pretty good control over where the surface goes and where it doesn't by splitting it. Then what I see kind of as a marker for making a decision is what is the thickness of the material. And so if it's a 1/4 inch or thicker, you kind of need to model that as a separate, wall, if it's like ceramic tile on a wall, or if it's a floor. And so there is probably 1/3 of people that are modeling that too, especially when it gets thicker. The other time that you do need to model it as a separate finish model element that sits there is if you need to quantify it. And increasingly, you're seeing firms get into scheduling and giving an account of how much of that finish or material there is, especially whenever they get into including cost components with that for estimating, being able to make a change in the model and then tell you roughly what the cost impact of that is. The only way you get there is if you're actually modeling it and there is a quantity of materials to sort of schedule or report that value. And then if you do parameters baked into the room, that's kind of the easiest way to do it, but it's not going to look right. You're really just parking data at that point. You're putting in RB for rubber base. And I sadly did a training where I showed someone how to change a finish schedule. They typed in RB. I showed them how to, difference between instance and type parameters and how you could fill in one cell and it fills in several. And before I could move on to the next thing, one of the interior designers said, "Mine's not working right. I typed in RB, and if you look in 3D, there's no rubber base." And it's like, that's not how Revit works. You can't just type in RB and it know that you mean rubber base and what profile it is and all the way around the room or not at the doorways. There's like a lot of things that you can't just type that in. So there are some people that are doing it, let's call it an AutoCAD workflow, where you're really just filling out the cells of information, but the model is not representing that at all. If you've got a low standard of care as an interior designer, you could do that. Or if you're not dealing with any kind of data quantification or interior renderings. And if you're not doing any of that stuff, your competition is. So kind of be looking to move into the other 2 ways of doing it. So I see all 3.
Perfect.
Agree.
I would recommend you model it unless it's just really thin and you're not being paid to do that. If the fee's not there and your LOD is 200 and for that flooring element, then it's actually wrong for you'd be over modeling it technically. You're doing work that you're not being paid for.
Perfect. Any other comments on that? Hopefully that gave you some suggestions, and I as well have seen it done several ways depending on where you are at with your Revit skills, implementation, and what you're trying to get out of the model. But of course, everything that you can put into it, you can get back out.
And just because you can model the floor doesn't mean you should.
That's a
if it's
very
a get in
valid
and get
point.
out project.
Okay. All right, so Justin has a question here. Please explain the proper workflow to ensure success for heating and cooling loads process within Revit via an MEP model with architectural model linked in. And this might be an more MEP-driven question, and we don't really have anyone on the panel that has a lot of MEP experience, but I'm not sure if anyone can answer that. Has anyone dealt with heating and cooling loads in the MEP side?
Man, I can run ductwork and I can run some pipes, but
okay,
That's
I'm not
about
going to
it.
pretend to be an expert. I'm an architect. I'm sorry.
Okay, no, and that's what I was afraid of. But what I can do, Justin, is I can send this question over to Don Raz, and he's our director of MEP services, and
Yeah, Raz could do them.
have someone on his team get back to you as well. So let me go
Now,
ahead.
we have had some Ask ATGs that were specific for our MEP team. I'm not trying to exclude anybody from that, but I think we could better answer, like, why do architects do this kind of questions coming from someone in the MEP field, more so than telling them how to do those workflows.
Yeah, absolutely.
We've got our own team for that. This is the architectural team.
Okay. All right.
I don't want to skip Terry's question. I don't know if everybody
Yeah.
has an opinion on that.
I see that one too. I was going to mention that.
We see
was
you,
up
Terry.
Go ahead, go for it. Jump right in.
This is being recorded. We work for an Autodesk supplier, so I will just put my cards on the table here. I saw that news article pop up in my morning news feed and sent it to my boss and said, I think this is going to be a thing because it has popped up in my news feed. You know, Google knows that I should care about this, and it's unusual for a news story like this to come along. And you know, some of the takeaways that, or some of the insights that I saw come about, or thoughts on that, are that architects in the UK do have a different perspective, and I can't speak to that. All I can do is kind of relay some conversations that were had. They have a BIM mandate in the UK, and so they are probably going to be a little bit more sensitive to requirements coming from Autodesk or really any BIM deliverable. And so I think things may be a little bit more sporty over there, a little bit jumpier over there in terms of, you know, this was pushed on us, we're not happy. So there may be some cultural differences and I see cultural differences just doing trainings in architecture firms that do things entirely differently. You know, generally speaking, firms in Central Arkansas and actually all throughout Arkansas don't really train in Revit. They sort of throw you to the wolves. But if you go over where Brian is in Oklahoma, it's like everybody trains. So there's kind of cultural differences that we see across the country. Once you go over to the UK, there's a difference there too. That's kind of all I would say about it, is that I read the paper. And just personally, not speaking for ATG, obviously, I was thinking, I don't think that they really outlined what their grievance is. Like if you were to point at Revit and say, it's not doing this for me, then that's something that could be addressed. But when you, you know, if you say that it's not, really the only takeaway I had was that it's not taking as much advantage of multi-core processor and multi-threading as it could. And that may or may not be true. And that generally speaking, there weren't enough in year-over-year improvements in the software to match what they said was a 70% increase in cost. That's, nobody's paying a 70% increase in cost going from you know, owning the box of software to subscription. There have been lots of deals done so that people are getting an equitable price to what they were paying. And if you're not, yell at your ATG salesperson and say, someone who's not in sales at all told me it should have been about the same cost, but it's not 70% more. And so you don't look at that and say, well, I want 70% increased productivity. That's my personal takeaways. I'm not ducking the question. I just kind of think that Autodesk is geared towards integrating Revit software across construction, which has been a huge undertaking. And you've seen a lot of purchases happening in that space where they're purchasing technology. Indeed, they purchased Revit as well. So they are trying to create an integrated next platform is my takeaway or my take on it personally. I'm the only one with an opinion.
I kind of agree with everything.
I don't believe that.
I kind of follow with what you were saying. So yeah.
What about you, Patrick? I mean, you're out there, you're involved, talk to a
Yeah,
lot
I
of
mean,
people.
I agree with everything you said, James. I think all of us feel that, sometimes there's some features that we're like, should have been introduced already. Why hasn't this been done already? And I can't speak on the background why it hasn't been implemented already or not, other than just keep pushing for it in the Autodesk sector and the website. Just keep pushing for it. Eventually we'll get those things. Maybe this is a conversation piece that will kind of get it started. I've read a little bit about the response, and they said they're going to take some things under consideration, start really looking at other things. But all we can do is just keep pushing for what we're looking for in the software, and hopefully we'll be able to get to there.
Okay, perfect.
I will say this too, that there was a call for more transparency into the development of Revit, and that's kind of unfounded, because all you have to do is Google Revit development roadmap or Revit development, and for years and years they basically take like, if you go to the Augie forums, the top requests that people have, that is like the primary driver. And Autodesk tells us this during their events, that they one of the primary drivers for their roadmap is what are people asking for in the forums, and if that's a credible source, like it is, aggregated on Augie, then that makes it into their path. If you look in for AutoCAD as well, I'll give you an example. For years and years, architects and other users of AutoCAD were wanting the ability to take a PDF and convert it into native DWG, or kind of reverse it back into DWG format. And, Autodesk told us for like 4 years, they were like, nope, you think you want that, you probably don't want that. And so they resisted that feature. And year after year, it was the top requested thing. And then in AutoCAD 2017, Autodesk actually integrated that ability in there, and actually shocked a lot of architects that now when they send out a digital PDF, their storefront person, could actually take their PDF, their digital PDF, reconstitute as a DWG, modify the storefront or the curtain wall systems that were sent, and then send that back to the architect as shop drawings that are hyper accurate. And they didn't have to do really any work other than import PDF, and they kind of own some of that stuff. So now they own the storefront systems and some of the details that architect sent. Well, not own in a legal sense, but like they have that DWG. And so that kind of shocked the industry that feature just sort of came out and was. And Autodesk is like, we could have done this 4 years ago. I mean, it's not a technology hurdle. It's just we don't think that architects understand what they're asking for. And now that everybody has the capability to sort of harvest other people's work, they sort of are pretty intentional with rolling out features that can have, repercussions in the industry.
I agree that intellectual property is always, as architects, it's something that we've always kind of held dear to, for sure.
All right, Michael, did you get a chance to?
Yeah, so I looked at the Bluebeam PDFs. I tried it with both Bluebeam Drawings, which is a free app that comes with Bluebeam from the company that they made. And then I tried it also with Studio Projects and Studio Sessions. Just loading it up into there. Studio Projects allows for online storage, right? Tried opening it up and it's white. So I'm wondering if it's having a rendering issue on the type of whatever device I'm using. I'm using an iPad mini. And then also with Bluebeam Drawings, even in the web page app, it's white. So I'm going to maybe shoot them a question, because I haven't tried 3D PDFs on my mobile device, only on here. On my actual desktop. So I will definitely dig into that. And I forgot, whoever asked that main question, we could probably get his name and shooting
Michael,
an email
I
is
hope
all
at the end of this, we don't discover that you just needed to pinch and zoom out.
You were
That weren't
zoomed into
zoomed
a
in
wall.
on a white piece of just a blank part of it.
No, it's
I've done that
completely
actually.
white. Yeah, I
Okay.
zoomed in and out, and yeah, it's not having it's not rendering anything essentially.
That's
If
the
you would
software advice equivalent of have you tried rebooting? You tried
Yes, and I did. I
pinching
closed it
out.
out. Yeah, I did everything. So it's just white.
Would there be a BIM 360 solution for that? And
Sort of. You don't send a 3D PDF. You just publish the project, and
yeah,
then
and you would still have access to the 3D
yeah. So you open that in
view.
any browser, and it will see it. So if you've got, I don't know, Chrome on your iPad or whatever, and you are invited to the project as a consumer or someone who has access to the project, maybe not a contributor, then you don't have to have a seat of BIM 360 design. You were just invited by your email address to consume it. And if the architect or the engineer has published that project, then it just opens right up on any browser.
Okay. All right. So I'm gonna,
There was a
go ahead.
follow-up question to that. If a
Yeah.
seat of BIM 360 design was needed, and
I see.
specifically, it's not to view published. You just have to be invited into the project. So if you're the architect and you want to invite the client in, you just need their email address, and then you add them as a consumer to the project, and they receive an email that they can follow that link and not just consume a 3D model of it or 3D views that you have published, but they also can see the PDFs of the sheets that you have chosen to publish as part of that set. So if you're early on and you just publish a early DD set, you would select some sheets that you want to publish, and then that is all that that client is able to see. But they can see it without having to purchase or pay for a subscription to BIM 360 Design.
Perfect answer. So yeah, we'll follow up as well as we dig a little bit deeper into the Bluebeam kind of offline and get back to you to see if there was a resolution for that. So Michael, we'll make note to do that after this meeting. So Patrick, you want to talk a little bit about Dynamo? How are you seeing this kind of used today? And I get this question a lot: is people try it, they try to get into it. How long is it going to take me to learn? When did it like really click? And actually, ironically, another Dynamo question came in. How do you gradually implement Dynamo into a production office? So I just slammed you with 3 questions. So I'll let you take over.
I'll answer the one in Q&A first.
Okay.
So that one kind of depends on how skilled you are in Dynamo, if you know Python or anything like that, because if anyone's worked with packages before, it's a little frustrating trying to get every user updated on your packages. So one way you could go about it is, if you're good at Python, is you can try and convert all of those custom packages into Python. Or you could pull the Python out, just make sure you give credit where credit's due, make sure you notify like, oh, this came from X, Y, and Z package, something like that. If you're not that skilled and you have a really robust IT department, you could have your packages stored on a centralized server, and you could have a robocopy activated, and it every morning, based off of the user that starts it up, if there's any changes in that centralized location compared to the app data location, it'll just copy and paste those. If nothing has updated, it won't do anything. So instead of trying to manage everyone else's app data folder location for the packages, you just really manage one folder location. The firm I've worked for 5 years, we had something implemented like that, and we tested it out, and it worked pretty well. So that would be one solution. I think John Pearson also had a built course or an AU presentation where he showcased how to use Python to copy and paste all of that, the packages to your user's app data location. So that would be another situation. But make sure you document your graphs too. Make sure you group them. Make sure you indicate what package a custom node is coming from. Include any sort of documentation, what the workflow is doing, what packages are installed, what version you have, what version of Revit you have. You want to make sure you have all those things kind of documented before you start, packaging them and implementing them off to your production team, and start with like a small group of people first, people who that you can trust to get into use the Dynamo workflows. Use the Dynamo player if at all possible. If you're familiar with data shapes, go ahead and use data shapes, though you don't necessarily have to. In most situations, you can utilize the Dynamo player, since they introduce the input modification, which is a really, really cool feature that you can utilize to have users, define certain inputs into the Dynamo. I see also another question. You'll need to be versed in Iron Python script. Not as much if you're doing the method in Dynamo, but if you're wanting to convert all of those, you'll need to be very well versed in Python scripting. Very well versed. So the other question you asked, Emily, was what do I see most people using Dynamo for, how they're implementing it, how to kind of get hooked right away. And you really want to focus on the time-intensive repetitive tasks. So view creation, sheet creation, placing views on sheets, loading in view templates, walls, or whatever into your project. Stuff that, if you were to do it manually, it would take you some time to do, and your brain kind of goes into autopilot sort of thing. Computer's a lot faster than we are, so might as well start using the computer's capacity to automate those workflows. So project start is a lot of stuff that I see people tending towards for creating Dynamo workflows to automate those sorts of things, because there was a couple projects where I would have to automate a bunch of views, place them on sheets and stuff like that. And for me to do it manually would take me, a day and a half. And having a Dynamo workflow readily available to automate all of that in a matter of, seconds or minutes, means that I can focus more of my time to other processes that, aren't repetitive, that do require more thought, more focus into. So that's where I see most people leaning towards in terms of Dynamo, and kind of, where the real power kind of is automating those repetitive tasks and taking information from one object and placing it into another object, that sort of thing. Like we were talking earlier, Brian, about life safety, of copying room occupancy information into a door and running a calculation. That's another really huge aspect, is doing the data transfer there. So kind of when did it click for me? So I've been using Dynamo now for about 5-6 years now. The one thing that really I would say helped me a lot is I was very persistent in wanting to get in and use Dynamo every day. The Dynamo forum was another key factor in me, getting to the point that I am now within Dynamo. And then the one portion that I would say to really try to focus on really understanding is understanding lists of information. So understanding the list structure in Dynamo, understanding object types. Once I started understanding those, it started to follow along, started clicking together. The more I would search for stuff to do in Dynamo, and what nodes to use through the Dynamo forum, then it started to click even further, because I was in it all the time and using those same sets of nodes over and over and over. So it just started to become muscle memory too. So that's kind of when it clicked for me, is when I started understanding lists of understanding how lists work, understanding list management, understanding how to modify and manipulate, and then understanding filtering is kind of where it started to click for me.
Patrick's got a few more, and we're glad you're here now, Patrick.
Yeah.
What he said.
I'll go get some coffee. I'll be right back.
No, so how familiar do you need to be with the Revit API to use Dynamo?
So you don't need to know how to code to use Dynamo off the bat. All of that API code is stored within the nodes. So all you really need to know how to do is really understanding the object types, like I said in the beginning. So understanding what is coming out of a node, so that way you can use it, put it into another node so that can then be transformed or modified in some form or fashion or created. So when I started, I had no prior background of coding. I'm just barely getting into learning how to script in Python. So you don't need to know how to work with the Revit API, just because there's a huge community of people that are very familiar with the Revit API, and they create, you know, those custom packages that I was speaking about earlier that add on, you know, more functionality to Dynamo that the out-of-the-box stuff doesn't have incorporated in. As they upgrade in versions of Dynamo, they're taking stuff that people have built and incorporating it in the out-of-the-box stuff, which is really, really awesome to see. So for beginners, you don't need to have any background in coding or anything like that.
How often are they updating it?
So they're updating it in 2020 and 2021. They're updating Dynamo kind of as Revit is getting updates. So whenever a Revit update gets pushed, if there's a Dynamo update along with it, it gets pushed to. Much like the Revit roadmap, there is a Dynamo roadmap that's on GitHub. So if you want to know, like, what are the next new things that are being tested and going to be implemented in the Dynamo, go visit their GitHub page. They have everything on there that you could possibly want to see that what's going to be coming out. And like, I believe the next version is Dynamo 2.7. I think that one might be out now for 2021. So the next versions of Dynamo and what they're going to be implementing into it, so you can view what they're doing, all the cool stuff they're going to do in their GitHub.
Okay. So it looks like Justin has another question as well. I don't know if you read it, but are there any specific Dynamo scripts for the MEPPP product other than a couple that come out when you purchase it? And I'm not sure if Patrick has experience with the MEPPP. That's the MEP Productivity Pack for those on here that aren't familiar with it.
So I don't have any MEP experience that much with utilizing Dynamo or using the MEPPP product. So I can't really answer that one.
Okay, all right, perfect. Totally understandable. What's the easiest way to manage package updates in a firm?
So like I mentioned earlier, if you have it on a centralized server, you kind of want to check periodically. Honestly, it's there isn't a way to kind of give you an update when a package, when somebody's updated their package, other than if you're very active on Twitter and you follow all those people. They generally post, like Archilab and Clockwork. I know them for a fact. And Monocle and Rhythm, they post when they update their packages on Twitter. I think you can follow them on their GitHub as well. If you can, I think all of them have a GitHub, so you can kind of see when they're updating their packages on GitHub or through Twitter. I don't know so much on LinkedIn. I haven't seen that many updates on LinkedIn, but mainly Twitter and GitHub, or just kind of check periodically once a week, and just to see if your packages are up to date. I've been kind of working on the side to try and figure out a way to create an Excel spreadsheet of the packages that you have in your directory and the package version that is out there right now. The only stopping point I'm at is trying to figure out how to access all of the packages that are out there and write the versions to them. As soon as I figure that out, I'll post it on LinkedIn. So yeah. Okay.
Suggested Python code editor.
So there's a couple. So there's Visual Studio Code, or Visual Code, I believe it is one. Danny Bentley on YouTube has a really awesome tutorial to do the IntelliSense portion. So whenever you're typing in your Python code, specifically for the Revit API, it'll start IntelliSensing all of that API, so that way you don't have to continually try to figure it out what's going on. It'll kind of help you out in a sense. So Danny Bentley on YouTube, he has a really awesome one on there. I've heard Anaconda is really cool, really good to use. I've been using Anaconda for my Udemy classes that I've been doing to learn Python. Is another visual editor for Python, or just doing it straight into in Dynamo. But I would kind of recommend exploring the visual code, just so that way you have the IntelliSense portion whenever you start typing and writing out your Python code.
All right. Just a general question for those. There might be a few people, on the call that aren't familiar with Dynamo, maybe have not used Dynamo at all or even know what it is. By utilizing something like Dynamo, with it being, something that's added onto it, is there any risk to using it? Can it break anything? I feel like I get that question often, is if I head down this path, can it possibly break something in my Revit model? Because we're all kind of a little fearful of, going above and beyond and trying new things to, no one wants to risk something that they've invested in. So I feel like that would be something that I get asked.
I think I know the answer to this question.
Yeah, so yes, you can break stuff in
You can
Dynamo.
break it phenomenally because it's
And
automated.
You can microwave a whole model. Like, you can purge everything out of a model real quickly, though I don't recommend doing it. That's anytime I do any sort of Dynamo building or anything like that, if I'm not 100% familiar with the process, or I'm trying something out for the first time, I always will build it in a detached version of the Revit file. I make sure it works 100%. I try to anticipate any and all issues that may come out of running said script. I get a little wary and scared whenever I'm deleting stuff. Thankfully, there's an awesome package out there through Springs where you have to supply a true or false Boolean to confirm that you are actually going to delete something. So if you are going to delete something, make sure you do that, and then really understand what you're trying to do in Dynamo, and test it, try to break it, and if you can break it, then you know how to fix that break if that does occur. But I always test out stuff in a detached file.
Okay, those are good recommendations, because I just fear people getting really excited about this and maybe not vetting it all the way through, jumping in, and could potentially cause issues.
Or has anyone ever uploaded a script to any of the websites you mentioned that was intentionally
Malicious?
malicious to go, oh, this is going to do this, and then people downloaded it, and then they go, it erased everything. Well, and then you go, well, why didn't you look at the script before you loaded it? And they're like, well, I don't know Dynamo. I just use the scripts. Right?
Yeah, that one's tough. You would hope that there aren't any, malicious people out there on the forum specifically where you could get these Dynamo workflows. Like I said, run it in a detached file. Don't run in it, kind of anticipating that this is going to work 100% of the time in your file specifically. Just like you wouldn't, take a detail from a project, load it into your project, and expect it to be, not go back and check to make sure that all the information is correct, right? You would take that same sort of due diligence, and you would want to have that same due diligence with downloading any Dynamo work off the web.
So Patrick, I remember we were talking at one point, when you have a package that's from the web, someone else created that package, right, from Python that wasn't, or whatever coding software they were utilizing. If you download that package, what happens if they update that package? Is it going to ruin what your workflow was? What if they went a different path with that workflow?
So that's that issue with having it on a centralized server. You want to make sure that it's on there. You're controlling one point, because there can be times when you have a new version of the package and someone has an older version of the package. Then if the creator changed something in their workflow, or something in the coding or anything like that, it can potentially break it. So again, kind of just making sure you go through the due diligence. So it's almost like a full-time job managing your Dynamo workflows as well as your Dynamo packages. So if you have a very good, list of scripts that you've built in an Excel spreadsheet, the custom packages that are associated to that. You know, if you're very meticulous and organized in that fact, then you can kind of scan through that list. Okay, Clockwork's been updated. What packages have Clockwork associated to it? Okay, you can go through and check, okay, I need to update these workflows that have Clockwork in there, and then I need to make sure that it's updated on the server, so all my users, when they log in, they'll have that update.
Well, has there ever been somebody, because my thought process going in is like, well, what if the creator deleted it?
So that can happen too.
So then your whole workflow that you had solved is now gone.
Potentially, yeah. I've had that happen to me a couple times. Thankfully enough, it wasn't that they deleted it. It's just that it got migrated into the out-of-the-box node. So I was able to check their GitHub and then find out that, oh, this package or this node went from their package and now it's been migrated to the out-of-the-box stuff. So I was able to then replace that node that was deleted out of their package and replace it with the out-of-the-box node.
So would you say it's almost optimal to first use other outsource items, right? But hopefully at some point you have somebody internally that can code these, so you're not worried about updates. You're not worried about somebody deleting that source code. That way it's all internal, then they don't have to worry about that or those instances happening.
Yeah, so ideally you would want to make these into Revit add-ins. So if you have a programmer at your disposal, definitely utilize them. Have them take the workflow and create it into a Revit add-in. Though if you don't have a programmer or if you don't have anyone that knows C#, there's also a really awesome tool called PyRevit, which the creator has a bunch of tutorials on there on how to start converting your Dynamo graphs into Python and then be able to store it up in a Revit toolbar. So that would kind of be the end goal, so to speak, is to take your Dynamo workflows, convert them to Python. It is going to require you to understand Python, and I'll kind of answer can Dynamo use Python 3? I believe in the newer version of Dynamo for Revit 2021, it is now utilizing Python version 3, so it is capable with that. I believe also in 2020 as well with the new Dynamo update. But you can take your Dynamo workflows, put them up into a Revit task toolbar to then be able to distribute out to your users. So if you're familiar with PyRevit, you can most certainly create your own Revit toolbar to go along with that. And then Danny Bentley, like I mentioned earlier too, he has a bunch of tutorials on YouTube of how to get started into C# programming for Revit.
Emily, I see a question in the Q&A, and I can answer it. So the question is, are there alternatives to Dynamo that can help automate the process or plugins? Probably all of us on this panel can answer it, but I just so happen to have Revit up and ready to share this. I'm just going to share my screen for just a minute or two and show you guys. Just a second here. Hang on, I got chat windows. There. Can you guys see my Revit?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Right up here, we've got something called CTC software. These are different tools that ATG can, talk to you guys about or demo this. Obviously in a 3-minute answer here, I'm not going to be able to show you any demo, but the BIM project suite tools, these green tools here, these basically belong in the hands of all of your content creators, your modelers. These are tools designed to make things faster in their workflows, such as renumbering all your doors or rooms in a project. That's a free tool here. So you should download the CTC BIM project suite. And all these tools are free to use for 14 days. And then after 14 days, the dark green tools do require a subscription. But these light green tools, you will get continued free hours saved out of them. And so you should use those. There's Superdoor Configurator. So if you're spending a lot of time creating transom windows, side lights, frame conditions, panel conditions for doors, this is something where you answer 5 questions and it generates a door configuration for you. A lot of architecture firms are finding that about 80% of their door types can be handled by this 1-minute process of putting together a door. You've also got some ability to add to that library if you want to kind of create or keep creating custom door panels. You can sort of grow that library. Hive is content management solution. A lot of automation in that for managing your RFA families and your views and content. And then there's BIM Manager Suite. Some of the questions we've been getting have been sort of more BIM Manager questions or more advanced level users. This is software that only belongs in the hands of 1 or 2 of your people in the firm so that you don't do mass destruction to your projects, kind of like that earlier question in Dynamo. So I just wanted to point to some of these. They're all CTC tools. So if you Googled CTC software, you would come across better descriptions of this. And then you can get a rough idea of what the pricing is. Obviously, we'd love to have an opportunity to kind of demonstrate some more of this for you guys. But go ahead and download the demo for them. These are great tools for saving time.
James, does the Superdoor add-in come with door panels, frames, etc., families, all of that with it?
Yeah, it does. So you download those as a secondary download, and then you choose the type of door that you want to do. I said I wasn't going to demo, but it's pretty easy to say I want that frame with 2 side lights and a transom. I just need a narrow vision panel. Do I want to add any custom parameters? No. If not, then move on to how do I want to have it named? And then you just, make sure that your firm naming conventions are sort of being observed here. And then you click finish. And then about 7 seconds later, Revit has combined the family type, the frame type, and the panel type and created a customized door for you to then place inside of your active project. Super easy lift for someone who doesn't know anything about scripting or Dynamo to be able to say, well, I do know about narrow vision doors.
Click a button.
Give me that.
Yeah.
Rather have a button most cases than trying to build it.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Just to kind of wrap up the Dynamo, there was one question in there. If you're totally unfamiliar with Dynamo, and thank you, James, that was good. There's a lot of great tools in there to go through. So if you have any questions about that, reach out to us or your sales rep or your BIM manager.
We're trying not to share our screens much, just to not lose people.
Yeah,
clicking through.
Yeah, exactly. So going into the last Dynamo, how much time should the office dedicate to getting up to speed? So if you're totally not familiar with Dynamo, how much time should you dedicate? Do you think this would require dedicated staff full time?
So if you're totally unfamiliar, what I would actually start out with is doing a training. We do training. I will perform the training for you. We'll go. It's about a day. We can split it up into 2 days at 4 hours apiece. We'll go through, build the Dynamo workflows. I'll go through and explain kind of all the ins and outs. What is Dynamo? Understanding object types, understanding lists, that sort of thing. We'll start building some workflows out for you to have to start. Take some time to take it all in, maybe reverse engineer it, add on to it, whatever. So that's kind of where I would start with trying to get involved in Dynamo, is first kind of learning it. Have a couple of users that you feel would be very much engaged in it. It is something that you have to be very persistent in kind of utilizing it almost every day, utilizing it as much as possible. It's kind of if you don't use it, you lose it kind of situation. So you want to kind of find some people who are very adamant about learning Dynamo, and then full-time staff. It just depends on how big your firm is. If you have a very large firm, you may want to start looking at creating a dedicated staff for it. You want to find your power users. Those people will be the ones that are going to be creating it, creating those workflows. But the great part is have somebody create one workflow, make sure that it works on all of your project types. Then you don't have to worry about that Dynamo workflow anymore, except for just kind of updating it. So hiring a full-time staff for it. It kind of just depends on how big your firm is, really. But it's not necessarily a necessity to have a full-time staff for it.
Hey, Patrick, so, a couple of years ago, the answer that you gave, which is probably the best answer, hey, I can train you. I mean, that's part of what I do. It used to be everybody had to take off of the Dynamo forum. They had a primer that was kind of like your first script. Don't get scared. Here's what it looks like. Here, build this basic thing. That got a lot of people going. And actually, I did that and started thinking, man, I can do Dynamo. And then what I meant was I can follow along if someone tells me what we're going to do and how we're going to accomplish it. And so I can do Dynamo with training wheels because I did a primer, but there are some free online resources because sometimes it can be hard to articulate the value to, an owner of the firm and say, look, we need to bring in Patrick for a day or two to do some training, pay the man, we need to do this because, obviously it pays for itself over the hours saved if we can build out some of these scripts that we need.
Yeah, so that's how I got started too, is through the Dynamo tutorials on there, starting with kind of the massing and the geometry portion, and then working my way into the I forget what the second portion is called, but that's how I got started too. I was doing that, and my first thing that I accomplished was just moving the base offset of a cabinet. That was kind of the first thing that I did, and I was just like overjoyous with it. So. Other free stuff out there. There's a couple of YouTube pages where they kind of go through how to build the scripts and stuff like that that are out there that you can definitely go and look at. The Dynamo forum, the Dynamo website is definitely going to have the most information on it.
I think if you're wanting to have that conversation with some of the key stakeholders in your firm about do we do training, Patrick, you've got some content on ATG's YouTube site from webinars you've done, and just kind of showing off, here's an easy script I did, and you can imagine how it's going to save you time. So they can sort of get some case studies or some examples of things that they should or could be doing within Dynamo just from Googling ATG USA Dynamo, and they're probably going to find that on the YouTube page.
Yeah, and then on all the webinars that I did, I go step by step on how I, built those graphs.
Yeah, so they can follow along like a free tutorial.
Mm-hmm. And then just add up the hours that would saved and say, hey, this is my
simple
ROI right here.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of time saving and money saving along with it, because once you have that workflow built once, again, you just have to run it again rather than building it each and every time. You want it to work for all situations, and so time saving just starts to add up after that.
So if you do get the buy-in and you have a dedicated person who is running with this, I mean, sort of like any other implementation, you obviously want to start with a plan. You want to map it out. You want to set, targets and when you're going to meet those. Are we looking at, is this going to be a 6 months process? Is this going to be a year? Is this going to die off after a few months when people get super busy and pulled onto projects and we can no longer invest in this?
Yeah, I think you can see by the volume of questions around Dynamo, it's not a fad-like thing. I mean, and Patrick can, I'm sure, talk about this more, but you look at where computational BIM has come just since 2016 in the last 4 years. It went from being something that, man, if you knew enough to even say anything about it, you were pretty smart or you were tuned in, to now there's a lot of firms, not just the young people in the firm, that are looking to apparently this can save us a lot of time. What do we need to know? So there's a lot of people now at that stage of wanting to get started in computational BIM. Once that takes hold, it actually has the potential not to just save time, but there's a lot of people doing talks on the transformation of the industry that's going to happen once architects start turning over lumps of their process to the computer to run iterations of.
Yeah, so generative design, the newest thing that has the newest buzzword that's been around since 2021 launched. That's like been the biggest feature. They've always been testing it. Refinery was what it once was in 2020, and it's still there for Revit 2020. And I've used it a couple times, but the whole iterative and generative design, utilizing Dynamo, it's really, really powerful, and it's really going to start, pushing the wave of computational BIM, more speaking on the geometry and, the programming and conceptual design phases, really start pushing that envelope and that message to start using Dynamo. The generative design thing is going to be really huge.
Yeah, I remember James was saying that on the last Ask ATG about where is BIM going, right? And
Yeah, Patrick wasn't here.
Yeah, Patrick wasn't here. And we were talking about how automation, right, is going to be, and now generative design, right, will be playing a huge influence on where it's going to be going.
Yeah, and I think even more so than augmented reality or mixed reality, I think that we're still waiting on that tech to sort of prove itself out. Meanwhile, Dynamo's finding a foothold in a lot of firms because someone is just, listening to Patrick and saying, okay, I can download a script and save, we're spending on a hospital project to generate these views and these sheets and place the views on the sheets. That takes us like a day. That's 8 hours of somebody's time before the design team can get started. And this is something that someone already did the script, and I can just run it. And minutes later, we've got all of that created. So we just saved 7.5 billable hours, and they put together an ROI. And now the firm has your attention, and you're talking about what are some other scripts, what's some other wasteful areas. And I don't even really know scripting at this point, but I know how to get on Dynamo Forum and say, hey, is there something that can help me do this? And then you've got, people like Patrick and other people plugged into that forum. They're like, yeah, it's already been done. Here, use this script. And then at some point, someone starts learning that script, and that starts driving the sort of appetite for generative BIM. And I've kind of been watching it, but it's right at the edge of firms having just now proved the value, where they kind of quit asking about, is it worth the time, or is it worth, to learn some scripting. Now, I think that they kind of see that it is. They're just sort of like, well, how do I get started?
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Perfect.
to me, it's kind of like next generation Lisp of what I experienced, 20 years ago when AutoCAD was going on, or it still is, but all the auto Lisp routines and everything that were being generated for AutoCAD that, some are still being used today. And it's kind of it's like the next generation, what can we what can we script to make this process faster? Yeah,
Perfect.
I agree.
I think that's a good kind of, what's next, and a wrap up as we hit the hour mark. Looks like
Emily, all these
yeah,
talks
yeah.
end sooner than they should, I feel
I
like.
know. I feel like
Last time,
I feel like we really get ramped up, and I'm watching the clock and I'm thinking, oh, we're really in this good conversation. So something that we're going to be doing in the future, and I believe that went out this morning as well, is before these presentations or these Ask ATG, is you'll have the opportunity to submit questions, so that way we can have them ahead of time and just kind of feed them in so we can jump right in. All of these were great conversations and great questions. So for the next one coming up, definitely maybe have a little piece of paper as you're working and thinking about questions you want to ask, and then submit them to us ahead of time. Or if there's anything even specific that you want to have something dedicated to. I mean, there was a lot of buzz around Dynamo today. It could be an entire, Ask Patrick, it could just be Ask Patrick for an hour.
Oh no.
No pressure at
Patrick,
all. Or,
I need you to look at my script here.
Patrick.
Could you? I'm going to share my screen, Patrick. No.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, we're always open to suggestions and want to know, what you guys want to talk about and what you want to learn about and hear about from ATG. So again, I want to thank everyone for your time today, and I appreciate it. And stay tuned for the next one.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you guys.